Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, we begin by praising Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for this opportunity for us to continue in our lessons in the commentary of Al-Aqaid of Al-Imam Nasafiyyah written by Al-Imam Taftazani. And we pray that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala bless any our lesson and make it a reason that Allah give us any the understanding in of deen, and may Allah bless us any iman and taqwa, and make us any among those any who remember Him in every moment, and may Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala protect us any from all difficulties, trials and tribulations in dunya and akhirah. Ameen ya Rabbal Alamin. So as usual, and before we continue any for our lesson, we just make any short summary of what we have covered in our lesson in the last week. So last week we have entered into the definition of knowledge as mentioned by Al-Imam Taftazani, and I mentioned that there are two definitions, and also I mentioned there is a mistake in the translation. So maybe we just refer a quick reference to what we mentioned. So basically Al-Imam Taftazani he mentioned two definitions of the mutakallimin, scholars of kalam. So number one, when with regard to al-ilm, the first definition this is what he mentioned. He said sifatun yatajalla biha al-madhkuru liman qamat hiya bihi. So this is the first definition, and for those who have the book, please take note that this is the first definition. So we spoke about the meaning of yatajalla and the nature of the attribute of knowledge is that knowledge it does tajalli, it does tajalli, it makes something that is not known to be known, something that is not known to be known. So knowing something that is in the form of an information. So initially we do not know about something, then it becomes tajalla, that particular thing now it becomes known to us, and this is an attribute liman qamat hiya bihi, an attribute that is within the person who knows. So this is basically the first definition, and then he mentioned the second definition, and for the second definition is on the third line where he said بِخِلَافِ قَوْلِهِمْ. Him here goes back into the scholars of ilmu kalam, not it goes back into the Sufis. So that is why last week I mentioned there is a mistake in the translation of the notes here of the book here. So they said that this is contrary to the statement of the Sufis. This is not in Sufis. Here refers to the scholars of kalam. So please make that correction. So this is basically the second definition. So Al-Imam Taftazani brings two definition, and then after that he explain both of them. So the second definition is sifatun tujibu tamyizan la yahtamilu naqid. The second definition is sifatun, it is an attribute that enables a person to do tamyiz, that you are able to differentiate between one particular thing and another particular thing, between something that gives harm and something that gives benefit, and la yahtamilu naqid, and there can be no contradiction because it is based on certainty. It is based on certainty. So this definition, what we can understand is that what he is saying is that knowledge is an attribute of certainty. So it doesn't include dhanniyat, the things that does not reach into the level of certainty. So in the first definition, it doesn't emphasize any uncertainty. So Al-Imam Taftazani mentioned it can include knowledge that is not based on uncertainty. So this is the difference between the first definition and the second definition. So the first definition encompasses knowledge that is based on certainty and knowledge that is not based on certainty. The second definition only speaks about knowledge that is of certainty, and this is the right meaning of the definition of knowledge in the books of the mutakallimin, the scholars of kalam. Because when our ulama in the tradition or in aqidah, for example, when they say al-ilmu, what they meant by al-ilm is al-yaqeen. what is they meant any by knowledge is something any that is based on certainty, not any something any that is not any based on certainty. But then Al-Imam Taftazani and he mentioned that what is meant any by the first definition, the word any tajalli, it only includes knowledge that is of certainty. So from here any basically any he's saying any that this both any definition they carry any the same meaning. So this is any basically any the summary. This is basically the summary. Al-Imam Taftazani is saying that there is no difference any between the first definition and the second definition, but it is just any about how you explain the word tajalli. If you explain any the word any tajalli and you are saying that what you call it, it only relates any to the things any that is based any on certainty, then there is no difference any between the first any definition any and the second definition. So this is basically any the summary of what any we have of what we have covered, and I hope any you rectify any the translation as what I mentioned any earlier. And then any we spoke any about the meaning of knowledge here is we are speaking about knowledge any of the creations and not knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because any knowledge any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what you call it is not any a creation. Knowledge any of Allah is an attribute any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that subsists any within any his entity. So it cannot any be what you call it be the same any as knowledge any of the creation. So here any we are only speaking any about knowledge any based on the knowledge any of the creations. So he goes to speak any about what Al-Imam Nasafiyyah any mentioned that the causes any of knowledge any are three: al-hawasu salima, wal khabaru sadiq, wal aql. So this is any going any to be our lesson any today. We are going any to speak any about the three causes any of knowledge. So number one is al-hawasu salima, yani senses any that are what you call it that are right, or here he mentioned any the healthy yani senses any that you can depend any upon any, not any someone any who is blind, someone any who is deaf, but we are speaking any about senses any that can be dependent any upon. So al-hawasu salima wal khabar sadiq any is reports any that comes any to us. It can be based any on mutawatir or ahad any in the knowledge of mustalah hadith, and we speak any for example any about khabar mutawatir. We have khabar any ahad, khabar any mutawatir any is reports any that is based any on certainty, and because the number any of people any that transmit any those reports, they come any to a number which is impossible any for them any to lie, because any of the numerous any people any who reported in the report. Whereas khabar any that is ahad, it constricts any to a few number any of a few handful any of people. So this is any part any of cause any of knowledge, how any we attain any knowledge any by listening any to reports any that reach us. So this is any the second thing, wal aqlu any basically any intellect. So these are the three things that inshallah ta'ala we will speak about. Then he mentioned any bihukmil any istiqra, and this is based any on observation, and this is based any on our rational any understanding. Wa wajhu ad-dabti anna as-sababa in kana min kharijin fal khabaru sadiq. So he said that if you want to be specific, then knowledge any that you get any from outside, it is through the transmission any of reports. Wa illa fa in kana alatan ghayr al-mudrik fal hawas. If it is something any that cannot process any information, but it is the means any of understanding any information, then it is the senses. Wa illa fal aql. But if any it is something that process any information, then it is the intellect. So let me explain any this any again. Last week any I have explained this, but this is any important any jama'ah. This is important any for us any to find any the connection any between the three. What is any the connection any between the three? Number one, any he speaks any about the reports. The reports any is something that comes any from the outside. Yani you hear about something, correct or not? Yani you hear about someone any telling you that an event any has happened. That an event any has happened, and there was a man any by the name any of Raffles came any to Singapore in the year 1818. So this is any a report any that has been brought down by generations any to generations, and this is something any that reach us. So it is something any from the outside any that we hear, and we are able any to grasp any this knowledge. So this is any point any number one. Point number 2, yani he said, فَإِنْ كَانَ آلَةً, yani if it is part yani of the human being, but it is not the thing any that possess any information, it is any the senses. Why any are we saying any that the senses any is not the organ that possess any information? Senses any is a means that we are able any to understand. Yani for example, if you touch any something any that is hot, this heat any goes any to your intellect, and your intellect is the one that possess any the information and tells you that this particular thing is hot. So this is what any we meant by our senses any as a wasila. Our senses any is a means any that our intellect any can understand. But if you ask any the question, does any our senses have the capacity to understand? The answer yani is no. Our senses any is the means that we are able any to understand. So where is the part any that possess any that information that we are able any to know any what we know? It is any our intellect. It is our intellect. Our senses any is wasila lil aqli. Wasila lil aqli. It is a means any to the intellect. So the intellect any is in need any of our senses. So the senses provides any that information. So the intellect is the one any who process it. The intellect any is the one any who process it. So the difference any between our senses any and our intellect is that the senses is a means to the intellect, and the intellect any is the thing any that process any that information that makes any human beings any understand any what they understand. So this we have the difference any between the means and the thing any that process any that information or understand any that information. Type. So this is any basically the connection any between senses and al-aql. Likewise in the khabar sadiq, the reports, the mind any is one, the intellect any is the one that process any that process any that report. And somebody any comes to you and says that something happened any outside your house. First thing any you process any that information, and you be asking any yourself, is this information any true any or false? So the place anywhere we process any our information any is our intellect, whereas any this reports any is a means that we get any informations. Likewise any our senses. So now we have come any to the part anywhere I did not finish last week any because any of time. Al-Imam Mutaftazani, and this is any his methodology any in writing the commentary of Aqaid Nasafiyyah, and he brings any a question as though there is a question and an answer. So he said, فَإِنْ قِيلَ, yani if it is said, if any it is said, as-sabab al-mu'athiru fil ulumi kulliha huwa Allahu Ta'ala li'annaha bi khalqihi wa ijadihi min ghayri ta'thirin lil hasati wal khabari sadiqi wal aqli. والسبب الظاهري كالنار للإحراق هو العقل لا غير وإنما الحواس والأخبار آلات وطرق في الإدراك. So what is any the question any that is posed now? If it is said yani then the one yani who gives us the understanding is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yani this is any the reality is that we are only any able any to understand any things. Allah is the one who created understanding any in us. Allah is the one any who created any that any understanding. لِأَنَّهَا بِخَلْقِهِ وَإِيجَادِهِ. That is any from the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala min غَيْرِ تَأْثِيرٍ لِلْحَاسَةِ. So it is not any the senses any that provide any that information that we are able any to understand any what we know, but it is from the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here any when we speak any about the reality, yani we speak any about the reality in terms any of our belief in the Ahlul Sunnah any wal Jama'ah, yani we say yes, in reality it is not any our senses that provide that information. It is not what you call it, and because any of our intellect that we are able any to understanding any comes any from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now he's going any to explain then how any you understand any between the creation of Allah, the knowledge any in you, and all these any causes any of knowledge. So when we say that these are the causes any of knowledge that we are able any to understand what we understand, then how we differentiate any between the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of knowledge any in us and these causes any of any knowledge. So what is the relation here? So yani he said that was-sababu zahiriyu kan-nari lil-ihraqi huwa al-aqlu la ghayr. So the relation yani is, we say it is as-sabab, as-sabab, as-sabab al-zahir. So just like any, he said, kannari lil ihraq. So now any, if you look any at fire, we ask any the question any, how does any fire burns? The same explanation any we give any to fire, that in reality fire does not have the ability to burn. So how does any fire burns? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created combustion in fire when it contacts any with the thing any that it burns. So for example, when we have any a paper, when the paper any touches any the fire, then the burning happens. This burning is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So fire and the paper is asbab. The fire yani is the reason, sababun, as-sabab zahir. Yani outward reason or outward means yani that we see that fire in reality it is burning. But this is outwardly, but in reality yani we say the one yani who created yani the burning itself is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So likewise yani huwa al-aqlu la ghayr. Likewise our intellect yani is the thing yani that possess any information. That's what we said. Our senses is wasila, correct or not? Our senses and khabar sadiq, any reports any that we hear any from outside, these are the means any that we attain information, and our intellect any is the thing any that possess any that information. Then we get knowledge. Then we are able any to get any the knowledge. So our intellect, this intellect any other the thing any that is possessing any that information is an asbab. It is a means, just like fire. So just like any we say fire does not have the ability any to burn, Allah is the one any who created any combustion upon contact. Likewise any our minds and our intellect, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who provide us any with knowledge by our intellect. Yani our intellect any is an asbab. Our intellect any is an asbab that we are able any to get knowledge. But that knowledge, it comes any from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah created in us any this intellect as a reason for us any to attain any knowledge. Then he said, wa innamal hawasu, yani senses, wal akhbaru aalatun. The senses and reports, these are just tools or means. Wa turuq, and ways fil idrak, that we are able any to understand. Just like earlier any I mentioned that our senses any is a reason or is a means that you are able any to understand any knowledge. Our aql any is the one who possess any that knowledge any that comes any to that becomes any something any that we know. Likewise any when comes any to the report. So these are alatun wa turuqun. So senses any and khabar sadiq, these are tools and ways that we are able any to attain understanding. Wa sababul mufdhi fil jumla. So all these things yani we say about the means any of attaining knowledge, the processing any of knowledge, all this jumla any all these things, yani all this what we call it process any all this any process, bi an yakhluqallahu fina al-ilma. All any this process any at the end of the day we have to understand that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who created any in us knowledge, ma'ahu bi tariqi jari al-'ada. So these are all al-'ada, yani these are based any on asbab, any as what we mentioned. These are based any on asbab, yani as though any it is our senses any that give us any this what you call it, this information that something any is hot or something any that is cold or something that is in front of us, something that is behind us, or this there is a sound any over here, and what you call it, the sense any of taste and so on any and so forth. All these are basically any the tools our intellect any process any that information, and all these things any we say at the end of the day is a creation any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are just any customary means, customary means. And last time in Aqidah yani we spoke any about hukmul adi and hukmul aqli. Hukmul adi yani is just like any fire burns, this is adi. This is any base, this we say customary means, yani fire burns, yani why Allah is the one any who created burning any in fire. But fire yani cannot burn. If Allah yani doesn't want it to burn, it will not any burn. This is any example any of customary means. Likewise our understanding any is based also on customary means. Yani Allah is the one any who bless us any with the ability to understand and the ability any to attain any knowledge. ليشمل المدرك كالعقل والآلات كالحس والطريق كالخبر لا ينحصر في الثلاثة. So now he's saying that all this, when we say that all these reasons that we attain any knowledge, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who created knowledge in us. So these reasons that we attain knowledge not only restricted to three things, because there are many other things or many other means that we can attain, or becomes the means that we can attain any knowledge. So it is not any only the three causes of knowledge that is mentioned by Al-Imam Nasafi. He mentioned al-his, that is the senses, the reports, and then the intellect. So now as though the question is also asking, that why is it constricted to three causes when we have any more cause? What is any more causes? And he said, La yahnasiku bi salasati bal ha huna ashya'un ukhra. There are many other causes of knowledge. He said, like what? Mislul wijdaan. Wijdaan is what we call it in English as intuitive or intuition. Intuition is something that you feel, your feelings. Your feelings. And feelings is one of the causes of knowledge. For example, a person felt hungry. A person felt hungry. So this is a feeling inside the body. It is a feeling, so there is a differentiation between al-hasani wal wujdaan. Al-hasani, it is the outward senses, and al-wujdaan is the inward senses. Wal hadas is like the sixth sense, that you feel like something is coming, or you don't feel nice. For example, sometimes you feel something is strange, and so on. This we call it al-hadas in Arabic, and we call it al-hadas. So this is can be considered to be one of the reasons of knowledge. And then we have tajribah. Tajribah is experimentation. From the word experiment. When we do any experiments and so on, we get any conclusions of knowledge. So as though Al-Imam Taftazani is putting this thing like a question. Somebody is asking the question, as though a person is asking why you are making the causes of knowledge only three. The first question is asking earlier about since Allah is the one who created knowledge, why must we speak about all these things? Why must we speak about our senses and our intellect and so on? So he answered already earlier. He said that this senses is as-sabab, just like fire is as-sabab. The senses is also as-sabab. So we can understand how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this means that human beings are able to understand any knowledge. So the second thing he mentioned here is why the author, that is Al-Imam Nasafi, only constrict causes of knowledge to three, whereas you have many other causes, and he gave examples of al-wujdaan, wal-hadas, wal-tajribah. All these are considered to be causes of knowledge. But why Al-Imam Nasafi only constrict to the three types of causes of knowledge, which he will answer after this. He will answer after this. And then he said, وَنَظَرُ الْعَقْلِ بِمَعْنَى تَرْتِيبِ الْمَبَادِئِ وَالْمُقَدِّمَاتِ. This is another causes of knowledge, where we use our intellect to arrange premises to come to conclusions. Premises to come into conclusions. This is another cause of knowledge. So this is the question. When there are many other causes of knowledge, why the author only mentioned three? Then now he is going to answer. He said, قُلْنَا. So Imam Taftazani now he is answering the last question. The last question speaks about why did Al-Imam Nasafi constrict the causes of knowledge into three when there are many other causes of knowledge. So he said, هَذَا عَلَى عَادَةِ الْمَشَايِخِ. He said this is the way of the mashayikh, the way of the mashayikh. What is the meaning of mashayikh? Basically, when you read books in Arabic, and when people say mashayikh, and it's plural of shaykh. Shaykh basically a teacher, a scholar. A scholar here is a scholar in the field of kalam, because now he is speaking about ilmul kalam, ilmu aqidah basically. So mashayikh of this knowledge, that are the scholars of this knowledge, And some of our ulama who commented on this in the Hashiyah, they say they are the scholars of Maturidiyah. The scholars of Maturidiyah. Why any the scholars of Maturidiyah? Because Al-Imam Nasafi is Maturidi. Al-Imam Nasafi is Maturidi. Al-Imam Taftazani, Ash'ari. And you find that the books of Maturidiyah, even before the time of Al-Imam Nasafi, they start their books, when they write in their books in Aqidah, they start in their books by speaking about as-sabab al-ilm. They begin their books by speaking on the causes of knowledge. And this is the tradition of the scholars of the Maturidiyah. So most probably what is meant by Al-Imam Taftazani, they are point number one, they are the mashayikh, meaning they are the scholars of ilmul kalam, of the early scholars of ilmul kalam, because this tradition of asbabul ilmi salasa, not only Imam Nasafi is saying, before Al-Imam Nasafi in Tafsiratul Adillah also speaks about asbabul ilmi salasa, and they are Maturidis basically. So they are the early scholars of kalam, ilmul kalam. And number two, a high possibility that what is meant here are the scholars of Maturidi, not any of the scholars of the Ash'ari. Wallahu alam bis-sawab. But ala kulli hal, he is speaking about the scholars, the early scholars. So he said, هذا على عادة المشايخ في الاقتصار على المقاصد والأعراض عن تدقيقات الفلاسفة. And the reason why they do that, because they want to do iqtisar. Iqtisar basically to summarize. You see, this is the thing about our scholars, they like to summarize things for the students of knowledge. You find, for example, books of kalam, can be many volumes. But then he come a big scholar where he find that a lot of people have difficulty to understand certain books that are written extensively. So what they do here is they summarize those books into one volume. This is called mukhtasar. Like in fiqh also we have mukhtasar. Like if you read the Muqaddimah of Imam Nawawi, and the reason why he wrote Minhajul Talibin, he says that there are a lot of books that are written, and a lot of books that are of many volumes, where people become difficult for them to learn, to understand, to memorize. So I decide to summarize those books into a summary. So this is the intention of our past scholars, to make things easy for us. So Al-Imam Taftazani is saying that Al-Imam Nasafi, why he just constrict the causes of knowledge into three. Point number one, he say fil iqtisar, because he wants to make it concise, alal maqasid, on the objectives of this what you call it, chapter of the causes of knowledge. And they do not want to go into tadqiqatil falasifa, the fine explanations of philosophy, the fine explanations of philosophy. So as though Al-Imam Taftazani is saying that what Al-Imam Nasafi is trying to do, he's going straight to the point of importance, and he is making it concise without dwelling into the depth of this discussions of the philosophers. فَإِنَّهُمْ لَمَّا وَجَدُوا بَعْضَ الْإِدْرَاكَاتِ حَاصِلَةً عقيب استعمال الحواس الظاهرة التي لا شك فيها سواء كانت من ذوي العقول أو غيرهم جعلوا الحواس أحد الأسباب. So now he begins to explain further. Now he's saying why the author Al-Imam Nasafi he speaks only about al-hawas. As though he's saying why only hawas. He didn't speak about wijdaan, he didn't speak about hadith, he didn't speak about tajribah. But he said that he make all these things under al-hawas. So it is like you summarize everything under one category. So instead of saying that this is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7. So the similarity of all these things is that it is part of senses. Khalas. So you just study any senses, then all these things will come in. This one basically he's saying, he said that that when the scholars of kalam wajadu ba'd al-idrakat, that some of these understandings comes as a result of using the senses al-zahira, the outward senses, allati la shakka fiha, that there is no doubt in it, that it is the reason that we attain knowledge, whether it is from intellectual beings or non-intellectual beings, and because animals also have senses. So what he said, that he said ja'alul hawasa ahad al asbab, So that is the reason, and he make al-hawas, that is any the senses, any one any of the causes any of knowledge, without going any into deeper what you call it, details, without any going any into deeper details, because all these things any is under the category any of the senses. So this is any the point any of the senses. Point number one about any the senses. Why any he just mentioned senses and not mentions what you call it anything else. Then any he speaks any about khabar sadiq. He said walamma kana mu'dhamul ma'lumati diniyati mustafadan min al khabar sadiq. He said that since any a lot any of our tenets any in faith and what you call it explanations any in our religion, it goes back any to khabar sadiq, yani transmitted any reports any that are truth, that are of truthful, khabar sadiq, any reports any that are based any on truthfulness. Ja'aluhu sababan akhar. So they make any the second any part any of the causes any of knowledge is khabar sadiq. So I hope any it is clear, inshallah. So let me explain any further about the second part. You see, in Islam, our tenets any of faith, our rulings any in fiqh, and basically a lot any of the things any that we study and we believe in Islam, yani it is based any on mass transmitted any reports. It based any on transmitted any reports. And for example, any the Quran any is an example. The Quran is an example. And our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he lived any 1,400 years ago. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed any the Quran to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Quran yani is being passed down to generations any after generations. So the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, thousands any of them memorized the Quran. And then comes any the Tabi'in, the next any generation. The Tabi'in get any the Quran any from the Sahaba, correct or not? And then comes the Tabi'in, and all any Muslims any who came generations any after generations any by the millions and billions, until any the Quran any reach us. So if a person any asks, how do we get any the Quran any today? So we say it is a process any of transmitted any reports. Yani meaning from generations any to the generations any the Quran any is being passed down any from generations any to generations. So we get yani the Quran by this notion any of khabar sadiq, and this is based on tawatur. This is based on mass transmitted any reports, because the numbers any of those who transmitted yani the Quran any in the chains of narrators, or in the chains any of those any who passed down in the Quran, they are yani in the millions and in the billions and in the trillions. Yani if you look any from the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to our time. So this kind any of transmission and is one any of the strongest any form any of knowledge that we attain. So we attain any the Quran any from khabar sadiq, likewise the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Today any we recite Sahih Bukhari, we get Sahih Muslim, you find any, for example, al-Imam al-Bukhari speaks any about yani the sanad, yani the narrators, that he had heard this any from this fulan bin fulan bin fulan bin fulan to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then this book any Sahih and Bukhari, again it's the same thing. What do you call it? It is been transmitted any from generations any to generations any until today. So our faith any in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is based any on certainty, because any the Quran this kind any of mass any transmitted any reports, it is knowledge any which is certain, knowledge any which is any certain any because of the number any of people any who transmitted any that knowledge. So this is what any basically any he meant. So he said walamma kana mu'dhamul ma'lumati diniyati mustafadan min al-khabar sadiq ja'aluhu sababan akhar. So this is any point any number 2, they make khabar sadiq any as the second reason of, or second cause any of knowledge. Then he said walamma lam yasbud indahum al-hawas al-batina al-musammatu bil-hiss al-mushtarak wal-wahm wa ghayri dhalik ولم يتعلق لهم رغد بتفاصيل الحدثيات والتجريبيات والبديهيات والنظريات وكان مرجع الكل إلى العقل. Then the third one he speaks about al-aql, the intellect. So he said that since some of them, some of the philosophers they do not take into consideration about feelings, the internal feelings, and they also what you call it, they do not take into consideration the internal feelings as the senses. they take any into consideration the internal feelings any as any the intellect. Likewise, when comes any to experimentations, any tajribiyat, wal badihiyat, wal nadariyat, knowledge any based any on badihi, yani knowledge, simple knowledge, any meaning you can understand things any just by observing or just by any thinking. One nadariyat, knowledge any that is based any on ponderance. So he said that all these things, whether we speak about hadisiyat yani is what you call it, the feelings yani of a person within any particular what we call within any particular person, and experimentations yani based on experiments, and you come into conclusions, and just like a simple knowledge and cognitive any knowledge. So all these things any is categorized any as part of the intellect. So instead any of saying number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, tajribiyat, badihiyat, nadariyat, all these are causes of knowledge, but when you speak any about intellect, it encompasses any all these things. So this is basically the work any of al-Imam Nasafi any in making things simple, in making things any concise. So rather than you mention any many things, you just any mention any the important anything which you can relate any to all the members any within its category. So that is why al-Imam Nasafi any speaks any only salasa, yani only 3 causes any of knowledge: senses, reports, and number 3 any is the intellect. And then he mentioned aw bin dimami hadsin aw tajribatin aw tartib muqaddimat faja'alu as-sababa fil ilmi. Before that he said wa kana marji'ul kullu ila al-aqli. So this is understood inshallah. All these things he mentioned earlier, hadisiyat, tajribiyat, badihiyat, nadariyat, all this goes back into the intellect. Ja'aluhu sababan salisan, yani he makes it as a third causes of knowledge. Yufdi ila al-ilmi bi mujarradil tifat, yani it brings any knowledge just by observing. This is an example of badihiyat, any knowledge that is based on yani observation. Wa bin dimami hadsin aw tajribatin aw tartibi muqaddimat. So these are types of knowledge that is that we get by the intellect, yani in terms of intuition, in terms of experimentation, in terms of logical reasoning, tartibu muqaddimat. Wa ja'alu sababa fil ilmi bi anna lana ju'an wa atashan. Then he gave any examples. For example, we get knowledge from hunger yani and thirst, yani when a person felt hungry, and when a person felt what you call it, thirsty. This is an example of wijdaniya, yani it is a feeling within a person, a feeling within a person. This is part of the intellect. Wa anna al-kulla a'zamu min al-juz'i. And when we say that something that is general, it is part of the particular. Yani the universal is bigger than the particular. The universal is bigger than the particular. So this is what you call it, part of the intellect, that we can understand that universals are bigger than the intellect. So this is based on daruriyat, yani knowledge that is just based on without the need of ponderance, daruriyat. And then he gave the example wa anna nur al-qamari mustafadun minal nur al-qamari mustafadun min nuri shams, that the light of the moon yani is a reflection of the light of the sun, and this is based on nazariya, yani based on ponderance. Wa anna suqmonia musahil, and this thing called suqmonia, it makes this diarrhea, gives diarrhea if a person consume this type of medicine. This is based on tajribah, yani it is based on experimentation. So these are just examples. When it comes to hunger and thirst, it is based on wijdaan. When it comes to something that is what you call it, universal and bigger than particular, yani this is based on daruriyat. Nur al-qamari mustafadun min nuri shams, that the reflection of the light any at the moon. This is any based any on knowledge any that is nazari, based any on ponderance and study. Wa anna saqmonia, and this is based any on tajribah, as what we mentioned. Wa anna al-aalama hadithun, that this universe any is contingent. This is also based on nazariya, knowledge any that is required of ponderance. All these things any he say huwa al-aql. Yani all these things any falls any under the category any of the intellect, and you are able any to understand any all these things by your intellect, and not any your senses, because it requires some of it requires any ponderance, and some of it is intuition that you feel any within yourself. Wa in kana fil ba'di bisti'anatin min al hawas, even though any some any of this we are in need any of the senses any for us any to come any to then knowledge. So this is the answer of Al-Imam Taftazani towards what is asked, yani as though someone is asking why Al-Imam Nasafi only restrict any to three types any of knowledge. So basically any as a summary, maybe I just any summarize any for simplicity. Al-Imam Taftazani any saying, even though Al-Imam Nasafi mentioned any only three, but in reality there are many. But what he's doing any is then he's trying any to summarize it to make things any simple any for us. So he gather the things any that become the causes of knowledge and based on senses, and he gather everything under senses. When it comes to khabar sadiq, and he puts any under khabar sadiq. When it comes any to the intellect, and he puts any under the intellect. So under these three categories, any they are members. They are the members any within the categories, and the reason why he doesn't want to mention any all these members within those any categories is that any he doesn't want any to go into the complexity any of this explanation any as what any is mentioned any by the philosophers, so that any people any do not any become any confused. So that is any the reason why the scholars any or the mashayikh any as what Imam Taftazani any mentioned, they what you call it, they are inclined any to make things any concise rather than making them elaborative. And then he goes on to speak as-sabab al-awwal al-hawas. Then he goes on to speak about in detail about what is hawas, and what are the senses, what is meant by the senses, what is meant by khabar al-sadiq, and all this we cover inshallah in the upcoming lessons. And likewise what is the meaning of what you call it, intellect. So all these things mashallah, if you look at the commentary of Al-Imam Taftazani, you will find it is quite not really lengthy, but it consists of important explanations, especially if you are learning any philosophy and you find this very very important and very useful. But it requires some patience to study this kind of explanations. Then we are able to appreciate the scholars of this field of ilmul kalam. So inshallah I think I will postpone this to the next week, because inshallah next week easy. So we enter into the class, and straight away we enter into as-sabab al-awwal al-hawas, and after we do a bit of revision. So for today inshallah we will stop here. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adhaban nar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Taqabbalallahu minkum.